Welcome on my first step ever. Another round and another story and another way of learning that how we can propel ourselves further in the life in the way that we want to, but somewhere we still lack the conviction, or maybe with so many stories that you have gone through on the podcast, you have slowly and steadily started to build that conviction, but you're yet wondering, how can I still make that start? So today we have someone really amazing who has done that, been there, and definitely, kind of navigated his way in professional space and even in personal space to be here to earn the space where he can speak with authority, confidence, and experience and help us pave that way forward for each one who's listening to us or watching us today. So please join me welcoming an amazing personality to this show today on virtual studios of my first step ever, Utkarsh Narang, all the way from Melbourne, Australia. Hi, Utkarsh. Welcome on my first step ever.
Hey, Shani, thank you for having me here. And as you did that introduction, it felt such a load of heavy weight coming onto my shoulders. And I appreciate all the words that you shared. And as the name of this podcast goes, I feel like when you were talking about conviction and taking that first step, I think, aren't we all taking those first steps every single day? And so we got to kind of leave away the load and just focus on that first step. And so if folks listen to this full conversation, they'll get to know a few things today. They'll understand the meaning of the word phenomenal, which is a tongue twister kind of a word. They will also get to understand how they can actionize a few things, and then they'll have a beautiful, heartwarming conversation that I'm sure with your energy and my energy, we'll do that too.
Amazing. I think we have already set the note quite well to begin with. And I love the fact that we are shedding off the load of, making ourselves think, oh my God, how are we going to kind of do it? And that we haven't taken our first steps. I like the thought process, which you said that every day we are actually taking those little steps, which are the first steps towards that particular thing that we are, working. So I'm very excited. Before we jump in and kind of get candid with you, Utkarsh, I like to give a sneak peek about you to our listeners today. So, Utkarsh is a learning consultant, executive coach, facilitator, and content creator based in Melbourne, Australia. Over his 16-year career from being a physiotherapist, you heard it right, and that to a good one, to filming and editing 400 hours of content for a Columbia Business School professor, to scaling a startup and leading sales, to now helping individuals and teams outperform themselves. So we see an amazing career progression transition over here. He has learned to make fear his ally in living a courageous life. He has a passion for understanding human behavior and using his diverse experience in building programs for organizations across the globe. He lives by his 5 core values. I actually read that as 5 crore values in my head, but I think those 5 core values are definitely synonymous to kind of 5 crore values. I mean, in any terms that you see, that
Yeah.
is discipline, excellence, growth, freedom, and love. When not helping others get better, he enjoys working on himself get better, which is through reading, meditation, exercise, and raising two amazing boys with his amazing wife in Melbourne, Australia. So, Utkarsh, we have now set a context of who you are, what you're doing, where you are. Let's trace our steps back to where you were just beginning to kind of understand yourself in your life. Please take us through the early days of yourself. Where were you born? What were you doing? Who were you surrounded with? And the kind of mindset of the people.
Beautiful. Thank you for that very warm introduction. And we have set the standard like so high right now that our listeners are feeling like now they'll get some amazing wisdom that they've been waiting for.
I'm sure they will.
I'll together with you try my best. So born in Delhi, India, 39 years ago. And childhood was amazing. Childhood it was surrounded by love. Parents who were both doctors. Dad, a general physician. My mom was a PhD, and I had one sister who's 4 years younger to me. And in those early stage, if and you understand the Indian psychology of parents, right? Both doctors, you're the first boy of the family, and then Utkarsh, you got to become a doctor too because you have to follow the footsteps of your parents. And it was kind of shared with me from a very young age. And I never felt the pressure of it, that now I have to read biology and I have to become a doctor and this and that. But it was just always like a dream that I'll grow up and become a doctor, because that's what I have heard all this while. And
Mm.
that's what I also got intrigued about through my environment. And so I went on that path. Being a young child, I loved playing video games. I would spend hours after school uh, playing those video games, and I clearly remember there were days when my mom had to like really read those chapters to me of Hindi and of social sciences to put them into my head, so that the next day when I go for an exam, I could do a good job. So never like a brilliant student, like 100 out of 100, but always like 80s and mid 90s, so to say. So it was
That's
okay.
really good.
I mean, in that moment, there were people around me who were scoring like 99%. And I was like, what is wrong with these people here? I'm like between 80 and 85, and I'm feeling really happy. And they would do a 99. They're like, "Whoa, that one mark, where did that go?" And so that's the kind of atmosphere. I was in a Catholic school, so I was a lot of joy as well. But then that idea that, Utkarsh, you got to become a doctor was very, very strong. And so I went on that path, went for my MBS training, went through those exams, and then yes, that's what I became. Then I got rank in Delhi, where I did my physical therapy, did my master's in orthopedic physiotherapy. So that was the growing years. Very privileged, very joyful. They allowed me to be who I wanted to be. My parents were never like, do this, do that, why didn't you get this? Nothing like that. So that was a very I think rewarding experience growing up in a family of where I was.
This is quite interesting, Utkarsh, the way that we have now, kind of gone through your upbringing, your childhood so far. I do have a few questions over here. Although it seemed like you had a path laid out, you had a very strong sense of, where you were heading towards in terms of your career because of the surroundings that you were born in. You saw a particular career and it looked like something that definitely this is the next thing that you're going to do. And you did that and did that well. But while you were, amidst those thoughts, and while you were growing up in your teenage, it's a time where we start getting a lot of different ideas. A lot of us are very confused as well, that okay, I know I'm good at this particular thing, but I'm really good at that particular thing as well. We do tend to get confused whether is this the right path that I want to go forward. Did you encounter, given that you were focused and you knew what you were doing, but did you have any sort of dilemma around those years of growing up while you were doing it, and how did you keep yourself on track if you did have that?
Yeah, it's a very, very nice question, Ishani. But as I'm reflecting on this question as you're asking it, in those late 1990s and early 2000s, there were not like 100,000 options available to us as youngsters. We were told that there was like no massive internet connectivity or like Instagram and scrolling, and oh, then you can be a comedian and you can be a videographer, an editor, and this and that. Nothing like that. And so I was given this one path, because either you could be an engineer or you could be a doctor, or maximum someone would say you can be a CA. And out of these three paths, I was not good at the other two. So being a doctor was the only path that was given to me, and I walked that path. Having said that, I remember when in grade 11 and 12, when I was busy studying and trying to get into those PMT exams or whatever they were called 20 years ago. I don't even recollect. I could see some of my friends having like a lot of fun out there, like going on their bikes and meeting girls and doing whatever they had to do. But I was given this one path, and then it was always told to me that, "Utkarsh, if you work hard now, life's going to be bliss." And this idea has been very strongly put into my head, and I think I would generalize it to say our heads, that you go to this path, you reach here, life is bliss. You get your great grades in grade 10, grade 12, get through PMT, become a doctor, nothing after that. It's all smooth sailing after that. And that's the biggest lie we've all been told, because that's not at all true. Life's never going to be, and now that I'm 39 years old, getting some gray hair, now I realize that life is never going to be a straight path, and it's always going to be an up and down thing. So, and that now really helps me, Shani, as me and my wife, we raise our kids. They're 13 and 10. We allow them to be whoever they want to be, do whatever they want to be, but under certain guide rails, certain guidelines. Because if you forget who you principally are, then that's a big challenge, and that'll be the struggle for the.
It's great that you've addressed one very essential fact over here, which is that we are always told that do a certain thing within a certain timeline, and time and life is going to be amazing. We will come to this because this is essentially very, very important topic to kind of really talk about it. I think that's where your journey, I think, really stems from. That's what I can see. But I think I would like to highlight something before that, what you've mentioned over here, which is for my listeners who are listening or watching to us right now, that I think back in the days you did not have a lot of choices, and probably that made things simple, a bit simpler. But the ones who are listening to us today in the early 20s, or who are still confused what to do, and it's probably because you have many choices, and yes, as a human you are trained enough to kind of be good at a couple of things, and that's why you have that confusion. So I would say that that's, I think, one aspect that I can pick out from here is that probably making life simple to begin with, maybe scaling things down, not being nervous about what to kind of go after. And I think I have been in that rut for a very long time, in my beginnings as well, because I found that you are good at multiple things, and then you're like, oh, should I try this? Should I try that? But then you're not doing any of it,
Yeah.
in the full capacity. You're not giving 100% to any of those skills. Something that I've learned, and also while a conversation, is to kind of simplify things down and probably go with one skill or two skills that you're really good at and spend some time with that. Maybe this is the biggest learning that I have understood. But moving on from here, Utkarsh, coming back to the hero of the episode, which is you right now. So you took the path, you became the physiotherapist, and you were really good at that. What made you think that no, I want to kind of steer your door, your windows, your for new ideas actually opened up?
Yeah.
How that all came about?
Absolutely. So it was all going well. I enjoyed healing patients. I enjoyed taking care of their pain and challenges. So I had one clinic. I opened another one clinic in northern part of Delhi, and then 2012 I opened a third clinic. And all this while I was thinking that as I grow in this profession, I will find a lot of more joy and I'll be very satisfied. But starting 2012, I started to feel this very strong dissatisfaction, because part of me wanted to touch lives globally or have like a deeper impact on the planet. And I did not know if that'll happen through physical therapy, if that'll happen through, I don't know what, because I had no idea. Now this was the phase where I started to kind of get confused, like what can I do with my life that'll allow me to have a deeper impact. And so I remember 2012 I would reach out to my friends and the known ones in Bangalore, a city in India, and in Mumbai, and say that, guys, can you allow me to do, if you have some pain, I'd love to treat you on Skype. And they're like, Utkarsh, how can you treat someone on Skype? How would you even touch my shoulder and tell me like what's wrong with it? Like, I can do that. I've had the experience. Can you let me test out this theory? But people would say no, and again, and no, and then no, and no. And then I started thinking like, this is not a path worth going. So I have to figure something else out. And in that moment, a great thing that happened for me was that my sister was working with this professor who was a professor at the Columbia Business School in New York. And she would be sitting on our dining table in our home and listening to these videos. And I was like, this is really interesting stuff. Do you have a job opening at your organization? And she's like, we're a startup. We're like 2 people in Gurgaon. I don't know, but the professor is here in January of 2013. You want to come and meet him? And I'm like, sure, let's do it. And this was a phase where I think the big learning was that if for many days on a stretch, Ishani, you're dissatisfied with something that you're doing, and you're waking up feeling like, what the hell? And you're sleeping thinking like, tomorrow morning I have to go back to it again. And if that happens for a few days in a row, then I think it's time to find out that what else can you do? Because there's
I
no, yeah, go ahead. You were saying?
Sorry, I think I'm just butting in over here, but I think this is the right point to kind of ask you. How long were you stuck in that mental, that toggle that you don't want to
Yeah.
do it? What should I do next? Kind of a thing.
Yeah. I would say it was about a full year. And 2012, I remember. So my dad had his clinic, I had my clinic with it, and my wife also had a clinic. So all three of us. And we renovated the whole space, invested quite heavily in it, thinking that if I do that, then it'll give me more satisfaction. But then still, it did not help. So it was a full year. And even when I went to meet that professor in January of 2013, the conversation happened was that, Utkarsh, we don't know what you will do with us because you're a physical therapist and you have a degree in science, but we're a leadership training institute. And so why don't you give it a shot for 3 months, probation period, come to the office 6 hours, continue doing your physiotherapy. And if it works out, great, we'll find a way. And if it does not, then go back to your physiotherapy. So I did not take, like, on the outside, it might seem that, oh, Utkarsh took a big leap and he was like ready to change his life around. But on the inside, they were like very logical, thought through steps that if I fail, I still have something to go back to.
Yes, interesting. So it's more like a risk analysis that you had done over there. It's very interesting to kind of hear your turning point, I would say, the slow turning point at that point in time. And as I've already kind of understood the kind of timeline that you have, that you were still, unsatisfied with what you were doing and you were looking for the next big thing. You did try out from your end and you got a lot of rejections. Before I move into the next phase of, then what happened, I think there are a few questions I like to ask over here. So when you were facing the rejections from your peers, from your friends, and you believe that you can make it work, but none of them did you give up on the idea until this, the Columbia opportunity came up? Or what happened between that phase?
Yeah, I think I gave up quite early on that path because I don't like vividly remember exactly what and how much time was it. But a few months into it, I realized that this is not working out. There's no point to hit your head on the wall when it's not worth the effort. And so let's continue doing what you're doing and keep exploring what else is possible. So I think that exploratory phase, that exploration was very important. And I think sometimes we feel that if you give up on one idea, then have you like really failed? But that's not the case because you tried, but it did not work out and you want to try something else. It's when you stop trying, that's where the failure happens. And I think that's the state that I would really appreciate if our listeners don't get there, that they stop and give up, that now there's nothing going to happen. I'm not going to do anything else.
I love it. I love this, Utkarsh, that we are breaking this down to this level, that giving up at one giving up doesn't really mean that you have lost it all, that you I mean, maybe if I give up, I'm a loser, that I've given up on an idea that I've been really working on and I've really believed in. It's more like, iterations, experimentations, trying. The essence of keep trying, looking for different ways of you did not give up on the idea, experimented, and you found that the way of getting to that particular idea is not the right way, and
Exactly.
you kept on exploring, and then you found another way. And interestingly, that we know that it did work out. So everyone who's listening to us, who's glued to us so far, this is a really important point that I would really like all of you to kind of pause on, reflect on, and understand that letting a kind of a experimentation, a way of path which is not serving you at this point in time in any way, it's okay to let it go and take it as a learning that this is not what will lead you where you want to. But do not give up on the idea of something that you really want. There might be ways of getting to that. And now we get to that way in Utkarsh's story, that so you reached out to them asking them, hey, can I be a part of it? How did that go for you? Where did you get that idea and confidence of actually emailing them or contacting them and asking these questions? I think this will be a really interesting kind of dialogue to kind of have with you, and for our viewers and our listeners to understand as well, that how do you get the confidence and idea to actually approach?
Yeah, absolutely. No, so my sister was working there, so she introduced me to the professor, and he was in India in January. He was traveling from the US, and so I said, let's go to the office and see what can happen. And see, I was going with the attachment that I will do my best, but the non-attachment that I don't care what the result will be, because that does not. It was like the very early stages of the experiment, so I did not know what to expect. So when you go in without expectations and without that attachment that, oh, the outcome has to be because I have to get that job, then the pressure is off. If I come here and the pressure is that, oh, I want to give the best conversation to Ishani and the best conversation to her listeners, then there's a lot of pressure. I'm here to just share my experience and story, and if it sticks, that's brilliant. So I went to the office, I had a great conversation with the founder, and I knew in that moment that I have certain skills which are transferable from being a physiotherapist to being here. And I did not know what exactly will I do, but I knew that skills of people management, skills of managing a business, skills of marketing, skills of interacting with patients on a day-to-day basis, all skills of managing a team, all that could be transferred to this new role. So I was okay, Ishani, with letting go of one identity and embracing a new identity. And so when they asked me, Utkarsh, what will you do with us? You're a physical therapist. I was like, I'll figure it out. Just give me 3 months. And if I don't figure it out, I'll go back and be my physiotherapy and do my clinic for the next 100 years. But if I do, then a new life can open up for me. And that's how it happened. That's how the conversation happened. And the great thing is that in that moment, because of that confidence, they also agreed to place that bet on me. And if they would have not said yes, then maybe something else would emerge. But I would not have given up. That I can assure you and the listeners.
I love that how everything came into place, and that what played a big role is your initiation, your understanding of that. First of all, your understanding of that you do have those transferable skills, and which transferable skills are going to be very beneficial for the organization that you're reaching out to. What is the match, the value add and everything, which you already kind of it's not like a pitch that you're giving, but still it's like a pitch, because we need to make the other person understand that if this is the challenge you're having, if this is the gap that I can fill, or maybe they're not even aware of maybe bringing a new kind of service to you could actually enhance what you're doing to the next level. So these are the few things that one can keep in mind if you want to reach out to people, want to approach them, understanding that how things can work. But also remember what Utkarsh just mentioned, that it may not work out, but that doesn't mean that you stop over there. And so, Utkarsh, that is amazing. Let's go to now fly to those amazing years where all the magic happened. You worked for 400 hours of content that you created for them. What was it like? If you can maybe summarize that in like a couple of sentences for us, that what did you really learn out of it, and how did that become the platform or the launching pad for your new identity or your new business?
Yeah, as I think about those, so I spent 8 years with that institute. Between 2013, January 15th was my first day, and December 31, 2020, middle of the pandemic, was my last day. And I'll tell you how that happened. But those 8 years were the best 8 years of my life, because I went in knowing nothing about that new field, the new industry, what I could do. But there was a fear every single day, Shani, where it was, and I think our listeners would resonate with this. I felt like an imposter, that here I am, a master's in orthopedic physiotherapy, trying to create presence with this global training institute. What if they realize I'm just a physiotherapist? What if they throw me out of here and fire me because of one mistake? And that fear actually in that moment felt like, oh, I need to work hard. I need to work hard every single day. And so I made a choice every single day of working even harder, because the fear was not in my control fully. The outcome again was not in my control, but what was in my control was the ability to choose that I'm going to do my best. And I clearly remember it was January 15th I joined. The first couple of weeks, I had to be on a call at 10 p.m. with the founder in New York and in a marketing agency. I did not have any idea how to set calendar reminders. I had no idea what email is, because as a physiotherapist, I was not using email at all. And here I am, 9:30. I doze off and I'm sleeping. Next morning, I wake up and I realize there was a call last night that I had to be on. And I thought, like, now they're going to fire me. Now my truth is out and it's not going to work out. And such moments happened again and again through the 8 years. But my commitment to being my best did not shift, Ishani. And that's what it helped me build the content, got into operations. I was the chief of staff for a couple of years through that 8 year period. And it was just a massive journey to see an organization from 3 people go to about 50, serve clients globally, millions of dollars. Yeah, I can go on and on, and we'll end up just talking about that. So I'll pause here and let you speak.
No, I could listen that for sure. And I think what is interesting, that when you give a very specific example of what was it like for you, what was fear meant for you, what did really go wrong. And I think these are the few things that we sometimes you don't anticipate that can go wrong, and sometimes we do know can go wrong. We think, a lot of us think ahead, a lot of us just go with the flow, but there are things that do go wrong, and how we kind of maintain ourselves, own up to the mistakes, or kind of learn from our mistakes are very important. So I clearly see that those 8 years was definitely uh, the span where you were learning new things, facing your fear every day, and yet making it to what you really wanted to. Utkarsh, from there, I would love to know, what did you learn from those 3 years, that when you ended up things in mid COVID, what were you thinking that really helped you now propel that you started your own venture now?
Yeah.
How that helped you kind of be in the space that you're right now?
Yeah. So I think the biggest lesson that came out through those 8 years, and I think it's a very valuable lesson to today's generation as well, Ishani, is that we have we have in some ways just put entrepreneurship on a mantle, like that this is what you should do. You should all become entrepreneurs, and you should all become content creators, and you should all become. We are celebrating that every single day. But I think what we keep forgetting is that if we have a 9 to 5 job that helps us pay the bills, that helps us have a balanced life, that helps us do beautiful work, purposeful work, not in a toxic environment, I think it's a blessing. And
No,
during
it
those
is.
8 years, that's the big blessing that I realized, that during those 8 years, that organization allowed me to be an entrepreneur, where in the organization I could do the filming, and I could do marketing, and I could do operations, and it was the organization's support that allowed me to do that. But it was also my endeavor, that I will not rest on my laurels for like 2 days. I need to keep evolving myself, and that's what the challenge I keep bringing back to my coaches now, that if you work in an organization and if you say that I can improve the system, I cannot believe that the CEO or the CFO or the CMO is going to say, no, Utkarsh, don't do that, because then that's going to make us better. And so a job is a brilliant thing. So that the biggest lesson for me was that through that entrepreneurial journey, that I can create something of my own. And when pandemic came, Ishani, that was again that fear, right? That I could die. And dying makes you feel like, then what? What's left of you? So that made me feel like, Utkarsh, you still have energy, you still have new ideas. Maybe it's time. I know it's the middle of the pandemic. My family was completely against it. My parents, my wife, and I'll share how they have been unconditionally supportive, but they were very against the idea of quitting a job in the middle of the pandemic, because they knew I don't have like a big MBA. I'll not be able to get a job. People are losing their jobs. Then why am I choosing to get away with my job on my own? But then that decision came from a moment that I need to build something of my own now. And that's why I took the leap. And why I say that having family was really helpful was because through the turmoil that I was going through and my career was going through, they've been supportive. Where I know that they are a cushion, that if tomorrow I fall, I have someone. God bless that we've been okay for several years now. But that support, just that knowing that you have your folks, you have your friends, you have your family, I think that really helps. So these are the few lessons that I'd love to share.
I love the fact that we have very loudly stated that it's not just about being an entrepreneur, being a content creator, and, kind of looking down upon a 9 to 5 job. I think it has 9 to 5 job has the word itself has become such, seen in such a way that, oh my
Yeah.
God, you're doing a 9 to 5.
What
That's
is
not
wrong
how
with you?
yeah, that's not the way of living life anymore.
Yeah.
But I've also had this conversation with a couple of my friends who are actually happy in their 9 to 5, as exactly what you mentioned. And I think people who are in the 9 to 5 who are not in toxic environment, that is a very important thing,
Yeah.
but they are doing what they're doing, they like. I think in any sort of work, a business or a job, you might not like 100% aspect of the things, but
Yeah.
if you are still working towards what you really are centered within, that can always be a pull, and when you are able to pay your bills, save a bit, invest a bit, and design your life the way that you can, I think each way is a good way for whatever suits you. I like the fact that you mentioned that you stopped when you found that inner calling, that now you want to do something of your own. It
Yeah.
was not that a pull from your outside environment, that this is what everyone's doing, this is the next big thing, this is how the life will people will run the life. It's because you had that inner calling and you went about doing things. So Utkarsh, Lovely to know that you had a cushion, and that's a very important aspect that I think I want to mention over here for anyone who's willing to kind of go on the entrepreneurship journey as well. It is a very lonely road, and it is extremely difficult. When you fall, that's a very low fall. When you sometimes you fly, that's quite high, and you need to maintain that as well. So one needs to have support, financial support, more than financial, I would say emotional and mental
Absolutely.
support in many ways. So have things figured, no, I wouldn't say figure out, but have an understanding of these aspects. So from here, Utkarsh, when you started taking that flight in your recent role that you are in,
Yeah.
please take us through that journey of yours, how it has been, and if you can maybe summarize that maybe in the way of top three learnings, that what
Yeah.
has come out of it.
Yeah. I think it all boils down to the 5 values, Ishani. Because I remember December 31, 2020 was my last day at the job. And so January 1, 2021, I technically have no business. There's no office, there's no registered company or anything like that, right? But this value of discipline has been kind of inculcated me throughout my existence. And so January 1, I got up, got ready, took my bath, in proper clothes, no pajamas, because the world was in lockdown during those times. And I was at my desk at 8 a.m. And let me figure out what is to be done. And I think that to me is like, to all those who are listening right now, I think I would really nudge you and urge you to find those set of values that you feel like are like non-negotiables. That today I might be worth $1 billion or $10, 1 rupee or 100,000, whatever be the case, you will show up with the same values, with that same attitude, and you make that happen. So that's just like the core idea. I think 3 things I'd love to share, Ishani, from that journey, and the journey continues because as you were talking at the start of the conversation, right? There's no end result here. You keep walking that path, one step, and your first steps go forever. Maybe you can change the podcast name, Ishani, to "My First Steps Forever," because that's how the journey really becomes. And 3 things I'd love to kind of share here. One, take care of your health. Whether you call it mental health, physical health, emotional health, take care of your health, because if you don't have your health in the right place, then you're going to lose everything and anything that you're trying to build. It's not going to be worth it. Number 2 is stop saying that the pace of change is changing or what is happening. Change is a constant. Change is going to happen, and you better embrace that change, because if you start to resist the change, it's not going to work out for you. Whether we call that it's the age of AI now, but even in the future, you don't know how human intelligence is going to interact with that artificial intelligence, and ultimately you will prevail. So don't worry about that, but embrace that change. And the third and the final thing is, figure out what your why is. Whether you're in a job or you're in an entrepreneurial journey, figure out what your why is to be on the path that you are, and then it's a beautiful journey. And I promised our listeners, Ishani, one final thought, that I'll tell them this new word, funambulist. What this word means is, and I'm a funambulist, and I'm hopeful that many here who are listening are also. What this means is to be a tightrope walker. And we're on this tightrope, the tightrope of life, and we're taking our first steps every single day, walking this tightrope. Walk a tightrope that's worth walking.
Lovely, excellent. I think this has been such an amazing discussion, chat, conversation, whatever you call it, with you, Utkarsh. There has been a couple of light bulb moments for myself, and I believe for a lot of our listeners as well, or maybe some reinforcements over there if they've already experienced that in their life. I love the fact that in your journey you have done things when you have felt that from your inner, you've been influenced anyway by what is happening, the trend of making things work at that point in time. And I think that is the reason that you have stuck to things
Yeah.
for long, and it has helped you to be who you are, what you're doing, experience. And I think the journey that you have taken, it's amazing, and the few things that you have shared can definitely stay with us. And I believe that there's something that you would love to share with our audience as well
Absolutely.
today, because I'd like to say something that before we were chatting, before we started rolling for the episode, I have recently started kind of journaling myself.
Amazing.
And I have no particular structure for that. I've heard that several times, and I would be the last person to advise anyone to write anything because I think writing never existed in my world as such. Because I'm a visual person. I'm more someone who would kind of have a conversation, just
Right.
share, and even express. I don't keep things to myself. So, but writing was not the medium to express. But I think you have something interesting to share, and because I am intrigued as well. So, if you could share
Beautiful.
that with us.
Absolutely. I think you've used such beautiful keywords here. You spoke about the core, Ishani. I think that's where all the journeys start. I'm still on the path. Still, I don't know where I will be in a few weeks, months, years from now. But I think what's really important is for you to start to understand yourself. And so we built a journal that's called the Ignite Life Journal. It's available on amazon.com, .au, .in, everywhere you can look at. And what it has is, Ishani, is about 183 pages of actually exercises and questions, which people can actually go through and reflect as to who they are. It'll help you define your values, put them into practice, and then help you understand where your career is going, where your relationships are going, and where you are going. And if you go through this journey, I think I don't know about life changing, but yeah, you will be able to, as I say, ignite your spark, and it's worth going on that journey. It's worth like maybe a couple of pizzas or one party, and you can invest into your life. And one thought, as you were saying, writing, Ishani, is the slowest form of expression. When I'm speaking, then I'm thinking as well, and when I'm thinking, then my thinking can go anywhere and everywhere. But when you write, there's only a sudden pace of writing that you can go through. And so I think that's where writing has been really helpful for me. Even before this conversation, I wrote down my thoughts on a page so that I know what I'm going to be structuring this conversation on. So yeah, writing is a beautiful way. And this journal would be a great investment.
I'm with you on that because, as I said, I started writing myself, and this has intrigued me when we were talking. So I thought, why not to share with our audience today, to whoever is kind of on that path or trying to build that path. Even taking out a page and start writing would be the first step, I think, to begin with, and then maybe if this interests you, you can have a look as well. But I always request my guest speakers to leave our listeners with a quote or a saying that they really resonate with.
Yeah. My favorite is by Mahatma Gandhi, and he says, "Live as if you were to die tomorrow, and learn as if you were to live forever."
Amazing. I really think that you have lived by that. We can definitely see from the conversation that we had today. I deeply, deeply, and from the bottom of my heart, thank you, Utkarsh, for being on this podcast and sharing your journey and how things have shaped for you. It's very organic, if I can say, and I think what's important is that listen to your inner voice and work upon that rather than, listening out, kind of
Yes.
coming things from outwards. So thank you for being on my first step ever. It has been a pleasure chatting with you. A real gem that we have kind of come across, and I think all that we had begun with, that has definitely been justified, I would say. So there's no pressure on your shoulders. You did that quite easily, I would say. So,
Amazing.
and to all my listeners out there, thank you so much for being glued so far. And as I always say, start believing in yourself and keep believing in yourself. See you until next time.